Everyone thinks they know the legend of Pandora's Box. Almost everyone is wrong. Today we're going to talk about what really happened. To tell the story properly, we'll have to go back to the very first humans. I mean, we're here, so we had to start somewhere. And creation stories are kind of mythology's jam. Pandora's Box is specifically Greek mythology, and in this creation myth, the Olympian gods didn't create humans. The Titans did. Specifically a titan named Prometheus, who molded the first humans out of clay. Sound familiar? Ironically, the name Prometheus usually translates as forethought, but in most versions of this legend, he only created males. Since both the gods and the titans were male and female, he must have had the concept of women, but that's what he did. Regardless of this oversight, the gods, and especially the king of the gods, Zeus, believed the creation of men was a bad idea from the beginning. Maybe he was right, but that didn't change the fact that now there were men stumbling around on Earth. It's possible Prometheus created humans in part to annoy the gods in the first place, since the Titans had been in charge first and the later gods had pushed them out. Safe to say there was some bad blood there. As for the humans, stumbling seems appropriate, since men weren't doing so well. They were wandering around in the cold and wet, barely able to take care of themselves. Which wasn't technically a problem, since Prometheus could always make more when he lost a few. Still, the constant attention was taking him away from other pursuits, and he was likely getting bored with the chore. So Prometheus, and no doubt you see where this part is going, decided to give men the secret of fire so they could manage better on their own. One problem, the secret of the fire belonged to the gods, so what did Prometheus do? That's right, he stole the secret of fire and gave it to humankind. You may be surprised to be reminded at this point that this isn't about Prometheus. But in order to lay out what happened next, his part in Pandora's legend needs to be clear. That said, onward. Now Zeus wasn't just unhappy, he was furious. I won't go into all the details of what Zeus decided to do to Prometheus for stealing fire, but just in case you didn't know, it involved chains and a giant eagle gnawing on the Titan's liver for eternity. Eternity meaning it's likely still going on even as we speak. But Zeus and the gods were nowhere near done. Humans had to be punished too. Not that they had actually done anything to incur the gods' wrath other than existing, but that was enough. And the relatively minor charge of receiving stolen goods, that is, the fire. Instead of taking the direct approach with thunderbolts and the like, Zeus decided to be a little more subtle with the humans. Noting the obvious missing element in humanity, Zeus ordered the divine blacksmith Hephaestus to pick up where Prometheus left off and create a human woman. Since Hephaestus had already made living assistants in female form to help him out at the forge, he had a good idea of how to proceed and soon produced the first mortal woman. And yes, it's about time she showed up. Pandora, whose name meant all the gifts. Her name fit her perfectly because now the rest of the gods got involved. Just as Hephaestus had given her form, now Athena gave her wisdom and skills. Aphrodite gave her beauty and grace. Hermes gave her persuasion and curiosity. It all sounds rather nice so far, but then it was Zeus's turn. He presented her with a sealed stonework jar, not a box, a jar, and told her to never, ever open it. Right. Hand a sealed jar to a person with the gift of curiosity and tell them not to open it. Of course she opened it. You or I would likely have done the same thing in her place and so released all the evils of the world on humankind, because that's exactly what the gods created her for and what she was designed to do. That Pandora did what she did was not a failure or mistake on her part. She was acting according to her nature, and her nature was the gods' plan from the very beginning. If, somehow, she had managed to avoid the fate the gods had planned for her, they'd have likely found another way to deliver the evils of the world on humankind. While Pandora and her jar is the most famous part of her story, Pandora's journey doesn't end here. Apparently quite pleased with himself, Zeus left the humans alone to suffer for a while. Pandora married, not a human after all, but Prometheus's brother, Epimetheus, whose name, oddly enough, means afterthought, which is kind of the way he falls into this story. Pandora and Epimetheus are still important even after the damage was done because together they produced a mortal daughter, Pyrrha, named appropriately enough because of her fire-red hair. It was Pyrrha who eventually married another titan, whose name was Deucalion. It was just about then when Zeus remembered he was still mad at the humans and sent a great flood to destroy them, which also sounds familiar. I know I've heard another version of this legend. Oh, well. Deja vu all over again. Pyrrha and Deucalion were the only survivors and so repopulated the world, which would make Pandora the grandmother of all humankind. We also should never forget that at the end she gave us hope. So, at least in mythological terms, we owe a great debt to Pandora. Maybe it's past time we cut her a little slack.